Hey everyone, welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, and we are back in the saddle once again for another season, as this is the start of the season. And I don't want to go too much into anything else because I have with me a returning guest, Tyrone Jackson, the owner and current lead writer of Sovereign Comics. So welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you for having me again. What is this like? Number four, five? No, 4 or 5. But
It's somewhere up there. It's somewhere up there. Obviously, you've been on this a lot in the
yeah,
last 2.5 years.
yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. I don't think it's any secret that anytime we wind up getting together, we talk about comics, talk about your stuff,
Hmm.
talk about controversial issues, because I think
Yep.
that's what the last 4 or 5 have been all about.
Oh yeah.
Um, but before we get into some of that, because you got a lot of going on, some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. What is Sovereign Comics? What is the basic premise for those who have no idea, never heard of you for the first time, or are coming and seeing this channel, or it's been a while and they forgot?
So the short spill, Sovereign Comics. We make the comics you've been missing. And what I mean by that is I tell stories. Like that's you could take that however you want. I'm into storytelling and telling those. I'm into giving people imaginative escape. So my stories are like that. I don't try to push my beliefs on people in my stories. I don't do any of that. I just tell you a story, you know, the way comics and novels used to be. And that's what I do. So when you come into Sovereign Comics, that's what you can expect. A badass story, an adventure story. You may get a political story, but it's going to be political because of the story, not because of the real world environment. Um, on top of that, I have this is the universe is interconnected. One of the things that I felt like was missing in that type of stuff and with comics, which I think Marvel and DC are kind of starting to do a lot more now, is in these interconnected universes when things happen, you don't hear about it in the other books. It's secluded. So that's one of the things that I fixed in my world. So is if you read in Temple High, you're gonna see mention of Cypher Team. You read in Stars, you're gonna see mention of Temple High and Cypher Team. You're reading, Cypher Team, you're gonna see mention of Temple High. There's events coming up here in Stars where you're gonna meet characters from. You're gonna not meet, but you're gonna see characters from these other titles that you've already met. I really try to drive home the interconnected universe with
Yeah,
my
so
stuff.
let's even
Mhm.
dive a little bit into this because we're missing something where you have
Uh-oh.
Temple High, you have
Mhm,
Cypher Team, you have
mhm,
Stars,
mhm.
um, Magos,
And,
Stigma.
and, Yam- and Yamo Stigmata,
I get it
yeah.
wrong every time. I get it wrong
No
every
worries. No
time.
worries.
And
So,
then yeah,
mhm.
and then you have I think the other one, which is the
Arisha
manga,
Exos. Yeah,
is
Arisha
also I don't
Exos.
know, was that reshot recently or is it being reshot, or because I know you wound up building it very basically breaking it down and then building it back
Mhm,
up into a manga. I don't know if it's
exactly.
done yet, is it, or is it still in the
So yeah, it is done. I actually did that earlier this year. So the first time the manga went out, it was exclusive to a subscription service that reached out to me and wanted one of my books. So I let them get the manga version of Arisha Exo. So that's the first time it went out. So whoever subscribed to that for Otaku Noir, they got that book. And then I reprinted it for whenever I went to Tennessee for a KaiCon and it sold out there. Like it was gone. It just people looked at it. Is this a manga? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it's a mech manga. I'm like, okay, I'll buy it. So it was like yeah, it flew away fast, but it
You know
started
why
off
I
part of
asked?
Sovereign.
Because
Mhm.
obviously the reason why I asked this everybody is that you have 4 or 5 titles at this
Yeah,
point.
and even more coming. Like there's more on the way this year.
And
More
so
on the
I
way
just want to
this
give
year.
everybody an idea of
Yeah,
what your company is.
yeah.
Because
It's
unfortunately, in comics right now, people don't know companies. There's a
yeah.
lot of people, there's a lot of imprints, there's a lot of companies that
Mhm.
have come out in the woodworks in the last 3 years. And so I just want to get everybody up to speed really
Oh yeah.
quickly because we're going to dive into stars a little bit. We're going to dive into some other stuff. But I do like talking about the controversial stuff
Yeah,
first. Um,
exactly. And to caveat on what you said about how a lot of companies have come out and they're making their comics, which I do it. Like you want to make a comic, go ahead. But a lot of folks, just being real, either A, don't think about it ahead of time, or B, never think about it. And for me, I've been building this as a company because writing is my first love. So I've always been writing forever. So I know that's going to happen no matter what. But when I decided to create Sovereign Comics, I was like, this will be a company. So I treat it as such, you know. So whatever my personal beliefs are not attached to my company because those are my personal beliefs. Um, and with that
Let's
being,
talk about this.
yeah,
Let's talk
mhm,
about this because this is something that I think I'm going to be on the show not this week but next week. I
mhm.
got a busy day tomorrow, but I got 3 interviews tomorrow. One of the best wrestlers in the world right now is coming on my show tomorrow. So,
Oh man, that's awesome.
but Dustin Waller, the guy is a
Okay,
beast. Guy
okay.
is a beast, and if you don't know who he is, you're missing out. That's 52 weeks. The guy has been
Which league is
pound.
he in?
He's in the Wrestling Open. He's on the Indies. Pound for
Okay,
pound, he's one of the best in the world right now.
okay.
But I digress. One of the things that I think is fascinating is I think a lot of people, and I'm going to be on a show, not, as I stated, not this week, but next week, where I want to talk about business with the guy.
Mhm,
And he has a
mhm.
comic book show and he has all these creators on, but knowing your numbers, things of that nature. And I think a lot of creators have no idea how
Yeah,
to run a business, don't approach it like a business. Running a comic book business is not the same as running, a supermarket
it
or
isn't.
running, a production line or running, an automotive factory.
Mhm.
And I'm using generic positions for a reason, but because those businesses don't have a fun component to them, but
Yeah,
it's similar to running a sports team
yeah.
where
And what,
you're
and also with those businesses too, those are the type of businesses that are, I mean, unless you put something somewhere where nobody lives, those are also the type of businesses that are always going to make money. Whereas in comics, that's not always the case. Like we're going to make money, but we're not going to always make money. To because a lot of people look at it, oh, you make comics, so you're a millionaire. It's like shit. No, trying
it,
to, I'm
it-
working
it's
to get there, but no, not right now. I'm not. So
It's that. It's also the idea that the reason why I bring up a sports team is that,
mhm,
in a sports team, there's a kid in the hospital who's sick. And he says, I
mhm,
want to sign baseball bat. So, all these sports teams, they wind up sending stuff. And so they technically lose money on that, but they're
yeah,
spending money and then it winds up getting made somewhere else.
yeah,
And that's the thing that I think people don't understand about running a comic business is that your losses and your profits or your expenditures for a
mhm,
better word, is very different than a
yeah,
traditional business. My eBay business is very different than if I'm running a comic book. It's sort of, I mean, it's adjacent to some
mhm,
degree because I run a comic book eBay store. But
mhm,
again, I don't incur the same expenditures that you do. And I think it's super interesting. I think so many people in comics don't have that education. They
yeah,
don't think about it and they don't really know what they're doing. And I think it's a
yeah,
massive problem right now.
yeah. I mean, you got, I will say, probably what, maybe 3 or 4 different groups of comic book publishing companies right now. You have the ones who left maybe Marvel, DC, and Image, who may have been artists and stuff for them and created their own. Then you have the ones like me who wanted to work for Marvel, DC, but always knew that you were going to make comics, but that didn't quite pan out. So you decided to start your own. So you know the industry and you're bringing that into your own. Then you have the ones who for a lack of for a lack of better words, saw Iron Man and then saw how well Marvel was doing. It was like, oh, I can get a movie deal. I'm gonna make comics and have no idea what they're doing. And they're typically the ones who you'll see fizzle out very quickly. Every business runs into trouble. So I don't say that to scare anyone, but every business runs into trouble. The thing that makes you, I will say, an actual business person or entrepreneur is understanding that trouble, seeing that trouble, recognizing that trouble, and then detouring yourself from it or going through it because you have to learn from it and then changing things up.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Or right now,
mhm,
obviously the comic
yeah,
book market is very soft in my business,
yeah,
but I can incur the debt. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not going through much pain per se, but I can incur the debt because I planned ahead. But I'm not
yeah,
changing course because
yeah,
I know what I have. I know the books that I'm selling are worth money and
mhm,
they're just not worth what they're going to be worth in 6 quarters from now. And
yeah,
I know the market well enough that instead of detouring and going for the quick candy and then selling out from under and then getting myself into a somewhat better position. I'm smart enough to know my craft. But again, I think people who say, look, I'm going to just write the book I want and I can incur the debt. And, those don't fizzle out either in a lot of ways. But that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, because typically those are the individuals who got deep pockets and they're just doing it for fun. So they're going to be around for a bit.
I know plenty of people who do not have deep pockets. They just budgeted accordingly.
There's that too.
They said, look, I'm going to spend $7,000 on my book. And you know what is, I'm going to produce this book. And then if it takes me 18 months to get another $7,000 to produce book 2, and that's just how they run it, where they run it within their budget. And sure, they're going slower, but they're doing it on their terms. Yeah. And there's something to be said about that too, where they're like, look, I don't have deep pockets, but I know how to budget accordingly. I know how to find and make sure that, and also they're trying to play the long game, where they're saying, look, I want to be doing this for the next 20 years. So if I take a $21,000 loss in 3 years, but I'm going to be here for the next 17, and I'm going to be making money in year 5, it's a no-brainer because startups act that way all the time.
Oh yeah. The difference with startups is they typically get bought out. A lot of them. That's their whole point, their whole process. Start up, sell. But yeah, I feel you on that. Like, because for me, I'm in it for the long game. For me, this isn't short. Like, my mind's not even on movies or animations or anything like that. Right now, my mind is just on building content, building out this universe, building my fan base, growing my fan base. And then 10 years from now, down the road, if that happens, okay, it happens then. But at least I have stacks and stacks of content. When I started, I never thought of, I'm gonna do one issue of Cypher Team and then I'm gonna pitch it to Netflix. Like, that was never never in my brain box.
Let's talk about that too, because that's the fourth, I feel, is that there's a bunch of companies that are popping up and their whole game plan, and this is controversial, it really is, is they're like, look, all I want to do is create something, put it in a comic, spend $6,000 collectively, run it on Kickstarter, and then pitch it to Netflix, Hulu, get it optioned. Whether it gets produced or it doesn't get produced, get that option money, and then try to get it, and then try to become the showrunner on it or an executive producer, and then try to build my clout. Or what a lot of people in indie comics are trying to do is saying, I want to write for Marvel or DC or Image or a Zenoscope. And they're like, cool, let me do my indie book and then let me get into there, so that I then can take the next step, and then maybe I could swing back out into indie at a higher level.
Exactly. And yeah, that is one. And I'm going to give folks 2 options that are way cheaper, and you'll get paid for both. If you just want to write a book and then hopefully get picked up by Marvel and DC, just go to an independent comic creator that is doing something and see if they are looking. Like, I know Godhood Comics not too long ago was looking for more writers. I actually just brought on did a sit down with a team, so they're going to be doing their book. It might get started this year, but I do have 2 books from 2 different writers that are in production right now. And you'll get your foot in the writing door, but you're not spending thousands of dollars doing your own publishing company. Same thing with artists. Just find an independent comic book company you can write for. Another thing, not write for, but draw for. Another thing for writers, write a book of short stories, write a novel. Those still get turned into movies. Terminator was a short story. The Matrix was a short story. Harry Potter novels. Those still get turned into movies. You don't have to do comics. You can do those and you will spend way less money. So
it's just very interesting, because right now what I think is happening, and this is just my opinion, is that everybody is trying to pitch and trying to follow big money. Because let's be realistic, making big money in comics, just in comics alone, is very hard. It's difficult. It's not easy. Some people can do it. If you know what you're doing, you understand, you know how to build an audience, or you have something that's really, really cool, or you have a product, but that is different. So you go the exclusive route. It is one way how to make a lot of money in comics, solely just comics. But we're starting to see it. Nothing against Scott Snyder, but why do you think he's teaching his comic class? Exactly. The real money in Tyler James is the same way. And then people may or may not like that, where, both of them have realized, including myself has realized this too, is that the real money is if I can teach a class to the masses and I only have to teach it once and I have 300, 400 students. And if they're paying me monthly, or paying me yearly, or they're paying me $200 as a flat fee, that's one of the things that's happening in comics
Mhm. Yeah.
very, very interestingly right now. And it's happening in the world. I mean, Grant Cardone, Ty Lopez, they're kind
Mhm.
of the masterminds of this in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. And I think that's something that people are saying, cool, how do I get that big money? Because they see
Exactly.
everybody else getting that big money.
Yep. And there's a lot of ways you can approach it. Teaching is one way. Like if you actually know what you're doing, like teaching is one way. I actually have a writer's course on my Patreon where if folks want to pick my brain and understand how to start up their own publishing company or understand how to write a comic. And because writing like some people understand and then some people don't. Like I understand there's different styles of creating, but like I've talked to folks who have their own publishing company. I'm like, do you know what a page turn is? Like, do you know what that means? Do you know how to finish a scene before you get to the next scene? Or if you have something special coming, wait till you flip the page to bam, now they see it. A lot of people don't know what that is and they just write. And to be honest with you, I started off writing, short stories, and I also um wrote movie scripts and stuff like that. Nothing published, folks. Nothing making money like I wish. But nothing. So that's the writing I did. So even when I came in the comics, like I brought that movie script writing in, but it still was not the same. Like it was totally different. And then as I started learning more, I'm like, oh, so this is how you do that. This is what they mean by even and odd pages. This is what they mean by page turn. This is what they mean by this. This is what they mean by, you know, one of the things I kind of learned within myself is like telling a story on each page or using the panels to tell its own story as you're telling your full story across the entire comic book. And those are just things that I've learned from myself from uh, trial and error, really. And then like I said, I have my course too, where it's like, hey, I'll teach you how to do that. Because when I started, there was really no one. Like I started with my company, like decided I was going to make my company back in 2009, got the name back in 2009, put all my stuff up on social media in 2010, registered my company late 2011, and then started working on things. And there
And
really wasn't a lot of
let's
people
even
there
dive into
then.
that because I mean
Mhm.
I've been selling on eBay for almost 10 years now.
Yep.
And this is the thing is that when I started selling comics, and it's been a long journey, and I didn't even start selling comics, I started selling Legos. So I was selling Lego minifigs, and then I was selling some cards, and then I was selling some other things that I was picking up in Target. So I
Mhm.
started off as very much a flipper. And then
Okay.
obviously got into comics, and then I just needed beer money, and everybody knows that story. It's an amazing story. Trying to get beer money in college,
Ah,
underage, I might add. Um, best investing story ever. But the point I'm getting at is, when I really started getting serious about eBay, there was no class on this. I
yeah.
had to learn it the hard way.
Mhm.
And so obviously, I mean, this is why I think what I teach, which is comic book investing, is so important. Same thing with podcasting too. When I
Yeah.
first started, there was no class on this. And even
Mhm.
still, right now, I know 20 classes and I haven't taken them, but I've taken their free thing and like their free intro class, and there's been nothing of value. And they're like, oh man, I had 10 top guests. And I'm like, but you've been doing this for 3 months and you're going to charge me $1,000. I've been doing this
Yeah.
for 10 years. I wouldn't charge somebody
Yeah.
$1,000 if they wanted to spend, time, or if I was to build a 12-hour podcast class. It wouldn't
Yeah.
cost
Not
$1,000.
for one class. That's overkill.
I
That's a
mean,
lot.
12
Like that's a lot of
hours
money for one class. Yeah.
it's 12 hours, but even still, I'm like, wait a second. And that's what I think is very problematic right now
Mhm.
is very much education, and self-education
Mhm.
is such a complicated issue right now in
Yeah.
college.
Because I know, like with Tyler James, because I'm part of that his Kickstarter thing. Um, and I think he was one of the first ones as far as like comics who was doing classes for Kickstarters and teaching people how to set up their Kickstarters and doing everything. That was one of the before I did my first Kickstarter, that was one of the first things I signed up for. I was like, oh, there's somebody here who's giving a class. Let me check it out. Um, but yeah, like there wasn't that many people there. And that's the reason why I was like, let me based off of my own learning experiences and based off of people in the profession who have worked for Marvel and DC that I've talked to, that I've had conversations with, um, and things that I've learned from them, and bring this all into like this little class. And I think for my class is only like, because it's subscription based, so it's only like a month. I think is for my class. So it's like if you do only one through first month, you just pay $100, learn, ask all the questions because it's unlimited. It's like you pay that, you can ask me whatever you want, whenever you want, every day for 30 days. And you get in there, you pay that, and you find out what you want, and you're like, you know what? I don't want to do next month. You can just
See, I'm the I'm the opposite. My class is one time.
yeah.
So the way I view it is that I'm going to put it on Udemy or Skillshare or wherever else, and I
And
want
let
to
it keep coming
charge
in.
$40,
Yeah.
$50, and that's it. And I
That
don't want reoccurring. You could have it for however long because I don't
mhm.
care because I
That's
just want to be paid and I'm
mhm.
good. And I
That
don't want to answer. I mean, I'll answer a few questions, and if somebody DMs
mhm,
me a question right now. If I'm
mhm,
paying, I'll answer you. That's not my problem. My problem is
mhm.
that I want to teach it once and then I want to
Yeah.
market it like crazy. I don't want it personal that degree. If
Yeah.
you want a personal class with me, I
Yeah.
mean, we can arrange that. I got no problem doing that. I've done mentorships for free
Mhm.
before, but
Oh, yeah. I've
I
done
don't.
many of those.
And
Many of
look, people have
them.
been good to me. People have been nice to me.
Yeah.
And where I was mentoring people on is not comic book related, but business
Yeah.
related. And I wound up getting a stake of what they bring to me, and they're bringing me like $20 a month now because
Mhm,
it's an affiliate link. That's great. They're making a bunch of money.
mhm.
I'm making a bunch of money. Everybody's happy. But the idea is that if I'm the opposite, I don't want to answer somebody's questions freaking all day, and I feel weird
Yeah.
about it. I want it to be one and done. So I want you to have the class. I want you to have it for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
and we're good. We're good. That's
See
just how I
me
run my business.
see me, I'm kinda like a psycho. I mean, I don't honestly, I'm not gonna say I'm kinda like a psycho. Maybe the reason why I set it up like that, um, is basically because of the way that's how I've always done. Like, even when I was doing it for free, like, I've talked to a lot of different like, a lot of publishers who have come to me and asked questions, whether it be about shipping, whether it's about writing comics, whether it's about character creation, whether it's about finding artists, printers, so on and so forth. I same as you, free mentorship. Okay, yeah, sure. This is who I use. This is who I go to. Blah blah blah. But like, and
Within
so since I was so used to the questions, and that's the reason why, maybe I just keep it like that. But then also I was gonna make videos too, like I have videos where it's gonna be like certain chapters, like okay, we're working on this, we're working on that. And now that you mentioned Udemy, that probably would be the better way to go. To be honest.
because
Like I can admit what I made. Probably made a mistake. It might be the better way to go.
the
So
way I see it is that I
mhm,
want to build a brand
yeah.
on that. And so I have more than enough content where I legitly have, and I got to finish my class and I got to re record it. I didn't like the
Mhm,
way my comic class came out. The first
understand.
six. So I have essentially six more PowerPoints to build. And I didn't like the way it came out. So I'm actually going to be re recording it, which
Yeah.
is fine. It's not a big deal. Sometimes life just, you record something and it's just wonky.
Exactly.
Um, but the point is that, I want to, but I have legitimately 8 more classes and the concept and the thesis of those classes built already. I need to build it, but
Mhm,
there's legitimately millions of classes that I can build. And I
yeah.
can build them pretty quickly in reality.
Mhm.
About I could build one a month. I could build probably about a 20-hour class once a month for
That's
the
cool.
next 6 years and not run out of content.
And that just proves that you're just you know your area, you know your field, you're expert, you're uh a SME, as we called it in the military, subject matter expert, so you know it. And that's how, because like first, like when I thought about doing the classes, I'm like, what am I gonna teach? And then and then I started thinking about all of the questions I was answering for folks. And a lot of folks that I did help them start their comics and stuff like that. And I'm just looking at it like you have more than enough information to where you can make these classes and keep them going and keep classes going and upgrade your classes and change things and change it for the ever evolving environment of comic books. So because it's always changing, like it's always changing. I think like even right now, a lot of the storytelling in comics and the way stories are told are changing. Um, Not drastically, just a little bit.
Yeah,
But yeah.
let's dive into that too,
Mhm.
because a lot of things have changed in comics in the
Yeah.
last year, 2 years.
Mhm.
Just thought processes have changed,
Mhm.
stories that could be told,
Mhm.
have changed. Even what I think stories driven by covers. I mean,
Yeah.
I really think that that's a big thing right now. Where I mean, I don't know about you, but I back Kickstarters for the cover. I'm like, man, this art is so fucking cool. Who cares what's in the book? Who cares? This is an awesome cover.
Yeah.
There's a book. There's actually a campaign that just launched. It's Mount Olympus, and I love Mount Olympus's covers. I think there's some of the best covers, and I just backed. Now, no, I didn't back their Kickstarter. I'm going to if I like a cover on there, but I just bought a Chainsaw Man cover they did.
Oh. Oh wow. Okay.
So they did a cosplay version of Power with like their character, and I'm like, dude,
Hmm.
that's awesome because I love Chainsaw Man. And so they also did Team Rocket, and it's
Okay.
three connecting covers. So I don't care what's in the book, and I
Yeah.
back campaigns just for that. And I'm like, so I think that's a major change. And I know
Yeah.
people can be like, oh, but that's been around for like 4 or 5 years now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but not to this degree. Not to this degree. In
Yeah.
the
It's
last
it's it's
3 years,
happening. It's happening a lot more. Where there's so many variants out there now, and that's what a lot of people make their money on. Like a lot of Kickstarters that make their money on the variants. Because I remember at one point, like when I first started off, it was like to get a variant, you had to help that Kickstarter reach a goal. Now the variant is right there in the tiers,
in
you
fact,
know.
if
So,
you reach more goals, they take them away.
mhm, so there was some that did that too, yeah. But I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. Like for me, I guess being a writer, I don't find that offensive. I'm trying to wrap my head around, hey, well, you spent the money, you can do whatever you want to. But sometimes I like to talk to folks about the stories, like, hey, what did you think? Or, and that's usually how
So
I am with my
let me ask
community.
you a
Mhm.
question because
Go ahead.
this is really interesting. So
Mhm.
this is where business meets creation, I feel, and this is
Mhm.
where they fight it out. Because I'll be very honest, obviously running a show is expensive,
Yeah.
so I would take sponsor money from somebody that I'm not thrilled with or a company that is
Mhm.
okay if I need to pay or survive, or if a company said, Andrew, you want to, advertise on your show.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, cool. You're an okay company. You've done some good things, some bad things, but
Mhm.
now I can fund the next 3 seasons. I
Yeah.
mean, but they want to put parameters on the show to some degree, and maybe I can't drop an F bomb.
Right.
All of a sudden now we're talking about a real creation meets, the fundamentals of the business and
Yeah.
standing and surviving in the business. And
Mhm.
so I think a lot of people in comics with these variants, they're like, I don't even know if they really want to even do 17 variants because let's be realistic, it's a headache, it's a lot of expenditure, but maybe they're
And then in the end of the day, too, uh, if you're running a Kickstarter, you actually lose a lot more money when you do all those variants. And to put that out there, and this is just coming from the business side, like let's say you do have a Kickstarter that has 7 variants, because there are some Kickstarters who've had, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've seen some with 10 variants, like stupid number amounts
Jim
of
Noble,
variants.
who does
You know,
Totally Rad Comics, did 100.
yeah, 100 different variants.
Yep.
Jesus Christ. So, like, my thing is, this is where we come to, right? So, in the printing world, and this is something like I'm giving up freaking free ass milk again, but here's something you will learn in my class. um, but in in the printing world, you have minimums, right? Like if I did a Kickstarter and only 2 people bought my variant, if I did a variant tier or did multiple variant tiers, and let's say some of the variants didn't sell, because I can guarantee you this: when people are doing Kickstarters and they have all those different variants, I promise you they're probably sitting there saying, "Please don't buy them. Please don't buy. Please don't, or please don't let it be one person that backs this tier," because when you go and get that book printed, printers have minimums. My printer doesn't have a massive minimum, which is something I love about them. But there's some printers out there is like, okay, you got to print at least 100 books. Can you imagine if someone only bought one variant and now you got to eat 99 other ones.
It also gets tricky because what if you make the promise saying, well, these books are never ever gonna, be sold.
Exactly. Yep. These are exclusive to Kickstarter. Like you have the main cover, that one gets sold, but all the variants are exclusive. And then in each variant tier, you have one, because I've seen that before in Kickstarters where people have multiple variants and like their main, everybody's back in the main, but then you'll see like one or two people buying as far as like the variants, right? And imagine if the printer you have has a minimum of 100 books that you have to print, and each one of your tiers for your variants have only been backed by one person. Now you got to
Also,
eat 99 books. And if they're exclusive, you can't sell that because, I mean, you could, but I guess it really depends on you and your morals and how you feel about your company, which is the reason why I say I separate myself from my company because I do have my morals where I'm just like, if it's exclusive, it's exclusive. You're not going to see it anymore. Like, I even have books that I've eaten because I'm like, well, it was an exclusive. I had to order this amount and
so
I
so so
never
so,
sold
so
the other ones,
I
you
have a
know? So
solution for that. So
I gave them away. I gave them away, like, for people who bought. Like, if they bought a lot, I just drop it in there, but as far as selling, because I said I'm not gonna sell them, and that's where the tricky
that's what
verbiage
I
comes
like
in.
to do. Where there's a concept
Yeah.
where if I say, look, this is an exclusive to Kickstarter and
Mhm,
I have 30 of them left, I'm just gonna sneak them right into my eBay business and I'll just throw it into somebody's thing, not tell anybody. So
yeah,
if you order, I'll announce saying, look, over the next 6 months, these 30 are going into random eBay packages.
mhm,
So if you
but
order something from me, you may or may
mhm,
not get it, but I'm not going to go sell it, but I'll
exactly.
use it for business or I'll give it away or I'll book
Mhm,
trade with people.
yep, but in the
That's
end
another thing.
yep, and in the end, I mean, you still eat that, but that's just something to think about for anybody that's out there like, "Yeah, Imma do 20 variants." It's just something to think about because I know, like, what was it, the Alma Stigma? I think I only had, um, how many? 2 variants for it? Yeah, because I had a variant for issue 1, and then I had a black and white variant for issue 2, but then I also had, um, a short trade where I put issue 1 and issue 2 together and made a trade, and it was about 67 pages because issue 2 is, like, stupid long. So the trade was, like, 60 something pages,
Let's even
and
continue talking about this stuff with
Mhm,
variant because I think this is just so important.
yeah,
I'm going to be talking about, and one of the things that I like to talk about is unit cost. So full disclosure, I just bought a Jamie Tyndall box. It's
mhm,
13 comics. Some of his variants, some of it is really cool. It was $104 the box. So there was a medal in there of like a Super Mario medal, and there
cool,
was a Virgin cover that was, I guess, the metal is sort of nude, semi-nude. The Virgin is regular, but it's got no trade dressing. And then there was a trade dressing, and then there was 10 other books.
yeah,
So and the reason why I bring all this up is that you have to realize that I bought 13 books, and the base cost is 104 divided by 13. So 13 goes into 104, and then that is my break-even point plus 13% on eBay. And this
yeah,
is what I think people have to understand when you're doing comics is that if your art costs 6 grand and you're doing 20 variants, or we'll do this actually a lot simpler. If your art costs 3 grand and you're doing
yeah,
4 variants, what you have to figure out is that you divide your art by 4 because it's over four
yeah,
books. This
yeah,
is very basic math. There's probably formulas that because books have different weights sometimes depending on how
mhm,
many you're printing, but all of a sudden and you have 200 books, 50 of each. And so if cover A was, I'm trying to think, do the math off the top of my head, whatever that number is plus, let's say it was $200 for your cover A cover,
mhm,
but then your cover B cover was $400. All of a sudden, what you're figuring out is that cover A would be, I think, 1050. It plus printing, and if printing was $100, it would basically be, and then 50 were ordered, it'd be like $1,100 pretty much into 50, and that's
yeah,
how much it costs you for your cover A. And that's a big thing that people have to understand, as well as that when you start spending $600 on a cover, but you sold 50 of them, you have to remember what your unit cost was. And I feel
yeah,
like people don't do that. And they
yeah,
don't do that before And I understand you can't come up with a number, but you have to have an idea of what that's gonna sell. If you
Yeah.
hire, Greg Bo Watson's coming on. I love Greg Bo tomorrow night. If you hire Greg Bo Watson to do a cover, you have to know what numbers you can expect from him, and you
Mhm.
have to go with the lowest number that that
Right.
that he usually brings to the table and base your arguments off of that. And I think a lot of people in comics do not know how to do this. I think they don't know how to think, and I think it's a big problem. And I think that's why most people in comics make no money.
Yeah. Like you have to and there's one thing too. And this is one of my things, right? I know whenever I did my comics at a low price, I was thinking about the reader and stuff. And then I was also looking at Marvel and DC. And again, this is something that I learned from actually having my business and doing research. Um, People don't shun the researchers because we find out shit that you need to know. But for my research and stuff, when I started figuring out things like after I printed my first set of books, and then I learned about price breaks. Certain amount of books you get price breaks, and then that price starts going down, 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 down per book. And so a lot of people have even come to me, like, because my comics were $5, they're no longer $5. Um, and people are like, oh, that's expensive.
We're
DC.
going to talk about this too,
Mhm.
because there's a question I want to ask you before we dive into that. That's relevant
Oh,
to
okay.
this.
Oh, you want me to stop then or keep going? You want to keep going?
No, no, no,
Like,
no, no, I'm going to interject slightly because
okay.
this is one of the things that I think also people don't understand either. It's just a tidbit of advice. If
Mhm.
you know you're going to be running another 4 Kickstarters and you always want to sell issues 1 and cover A, maybe it makes sense for you to eat the fat and get that big price discount and print 1,000 copies of cover A if you know it's going to be like 80 cents a book. That's just something to keep in the back of your head if you're serious about this. If you know you're going to be doing 4 issues, you know what? It might make sense for you to pick up a few extra issues to get that discount. But
Yeah.
that's the only thing I wanted to say is that, and this is where the business acumen comes in.
Yeah.
And this
Exactly.
is where we discover who's really good at business and who
Exactly.
is not.
Yeah.
And
Because I.
that's a big difference. I
Mhm.
mean, I might be doing a book that I'm going to be printing 200 copies of, and people are going to
Mhm.
be of each segment. And people might be like, "What the fuck's the matter with you?" And I'll be like, "Well, I'm probably going to get a better deal on 200 books if I'm printing it, but if then I'm per segment, if I'm printing 5 different SKUs, I'm printing 1,000 books. I'm going to hopefully get a little bit of a better price than if I'm only printing what was ordered.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Whether I do or I don't, that's still up in the air.
Yeah.
But the idea is that I would rather eat the fat because then I could always sell those books later on
Mhm.
because it's a
Yeah.
product. But anyway, continue because I know where we're going with this. I know exactly
Yeah.
where we're going with this, and then we're going to talk about this because talking about price and raising prices
Yeah.
is
So
so
like,
important.
yeah, so like with me, I rose my prices because one, I don't like to order heavy amounts of books unless it's like con season or something like that. But typically, I don't like to do that because I don't like to look at stock. Like there's certain books that I do have where I never look at the stocks, and like Temple High for sure. If I order 100 books, they're gone in a week. Like, so it's like, so that's one of the ones where I'm like, okay, if I order big, they're gonna be gone. But ultimately what I'm getting at is like I've had people even approach me and say, "Oh, $5 is too expensive." Again, my books aren't $5 anymore. And then I've also heard from other publishers who actually understand business who've risen the price of their books and so on and so forth. And people were telling them, "Well, Marvel and DC doesn't charge that much." So there's an illusion that people have. One, we're independent. We are not Marvel and DC. So that's the first illusion that people need to just go ahead and just punt that right out of your head. Two, and this might actually make some people angry, but if you actually do the math, you'll see where the independent comics for us who are charging $10 and stuff like that, you're going to see where everything starts adding up. Marvel and DC, whenever they get books, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, I'll say if Marvel does a new X-Men #1, right, they'll probably order 200,000 copies of that book. And I'm giving them a benefit of the doubt. They might order more. Who knows? At 200,000, they're getting a very substantial price break. Like a very substantial price break, right? So they're probably spending, and again, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. I'll say 50 cents per book, roughly. And then they turn around and sell you that book for 4.99. So you got to think about that. How much money they're actually making when you take 4.99. Let's take and then you take that 50 cent out. So now you got
It's
4.49
it's trickier than that.
times
I'm
2,000.
going to challenge. I'm going to
Mhm.
challenge you on that slightly.
What's up?
They're not making a 10x. They're making a 5x on the most part because they sell it wholesale.
What do you mean? Say again?
So when Marvel and DC, they'll
Mhm.
get it for 50 cents to printing. I agree on that,
Mhm.
but they're not selling it direct to consumer for $5. Your
Well,
comic
of course they aren't because they're selling it to the store and stuff like that. But
so
also in a lot
so
of Marvel's store though, like if you actually buy a physical comic, it is the same price that it is in the stores because again in business, not price matching, that's the wrong thing. But there is a term in business to where if companies that are on similar levels, if one undersells or oversells everyone else, you could typically get in trouble for that in the business world. So everybody stays in that ring.
within reason,
So if
within
the
reason.
stores, yeah, so yeah, within reason. So I mean, if you do like if it's 4.99 for the book and that's what the stores are selling it for, Marvel could say, okay, well we'll sell it for 4.75, but they can't come back and say, oh, we're going to sell our books for $2 while the
The
LCSs are selling for
where, where,
4.99. They
where I'm
can't do
going
that.
with this, and the
Yeah.
reason why I bring this up is that this is something about that people have to understand about business. And the only reason why I know this is that I'm now picking up retail packages.
Mhm.
So I get a wholesale price. And when somebody doesn't understand how to sell me a wholesale price for a book,
Yeah.
on a Kickstarter, I'm like,
Well, I
you have to
mean
realize
that
there's no money to be made here. But when somebody
Yeah,
says,
and it depends on the company really, because there's multiple different routes you can go with wholesaling. You can go with wholesaling where pretty much you charge the company your print prices per book. So if you are paying like if you're Marvel and DC and you're paying 75 cents or 50 cents to get a book printed, you can tell the stores, hey, we're going to charge you that. Or you can up that price and say, we're going to charge you $2. And then the store, of course, will turn around and say, okay, well, we got to make money off of this. So we're gonna sell it for $4. So it's a
you weigh,
wild world, but in the end of the day,
yeah,
comparing Marvel and DC to independents and saying that independents need to sell our books for the same prices as Marvel and DC. A lot of us aren't in stores, so that's something else to take in consideration. And it's just, in the end of the day, only thing it's going
it's
to do is
tricky.
make an independent comic book company go broke if everybody's trying to sell their books for
It,
three
it's
ninety nine and four
also
ninety nine.
it's also the idea that it's JD or Rosario does this where he prints
Hmm.
3,000. I think it's
Hmm.
offset printing. I want to say, or is it? It's
Okay.
offset, right? You're
Yeah, you
printing
got offset.
3,000.
Well, you have to do two different types. There's offset, and then there's their actual direct printing. But yeah, offset is one of them too. So
So he prints 3,000 copies of his
mhm,
books. So he's charging $5 for a book. But when you're
mhm,
printing 3,000 copies of your book, you can
mhm.
sell your book for $5. But
Oh yeah,
if you're only printing 200 copies of your book, you can't sell it for $5.
mhm,
But my counter to all of this, and I want to challenge because I like challenging right now, is that there does get to a point where somebody does get priced out. So, and I'll give an example. So I have personal barometers where Paul Green is a top Zenoscope artist.
mhm.
Zenoscope will sell me a 250 print run of a Paul Green for $25. So if I come up to somebody who I don't know their work, their book looks interesting, I think it's a flyer and it's not a variant, I don't know how many are printed, and there's a hell of a lot more than 250 copies of that book printed, I have to say, okay, cool. You know what it is? If it's $10, I'm interested. Maybe if it's 12, but the second you start exceeding $20 for a cover A, I don't really care how good your book is on the indie realm. I'm
Yeah,
sort of priced out because I'm
yeah,
like, I can't take that risk. I
yeah. I
cannot go
mean,
on a journey with
and
you.
I get the route that you come because you're more in the investment side of things. So you buy the comics based on the artist of the cover and so on and so forth. Me, I'm not like that. I don't care about your variant cover. I care about your story, and if your story is garbage, I'm never buying your book again. That's just me. And
But
I do
that's my
think
point with
in
this, though,
that fashion, so many people have gotten caught up on variants that a lot of indie and I don't knock them for doing this. I actually think it's smart. They're playing to that. They're like, oh, so you like this artist? Let me see if I can get them. The only thing that I see that could be a headache, or not really a headache, but a hindrance financially, and growth wise for your company, is if you can't afford that and instead you're like, oh, I'm gonna get a loan so I can pay for these artists, and then you get put in debt, and then you got to close or file bankruptcy. Um, So there's a lot of things you have to watch out for when you're doing things like that. Again, I don't knock any independent creator who's like, "Oh, everybody loves this is the hot new artist. Let me see if I can get a cover from them." Like, hey, go for it. You're probably going to make a lot of money off of that. However, if you are not in the financial lanes of doing that, stop.
It's very tricky. It's very
Yeah.
tricky. And again, you know what it is? I've made a determination. I'm very good at finance. So I'm going to drop some barometers, and this is not
Okay.
financial advice, but it's just thought
Mhm.
process. And
Yeah.
it goes back to business. I mean, this should be business class 101. We should just stop and then
I know,
just start
right?
recording with
Rename it.
but one of the things is that there's this thing called the S&P 500. It is
Mhm,
the top 500 stocks in America. It is
mhm,
a barometer of how well the economy is doing.
mhm.
And so, what I always say to people when you're building a comic and you're building a business is that you have to say, "Cool," because right now I take 10% of my income and put it into my 401k, and it's averaging 9.4% in what it's in, in the last 10 years on average, an S&P fund. So I have to say to myself, do I take that money out and do I produce a comic and will it outproduce that?
Mhm.
Plus, do I give up the match? And so you have to understand, even if you don't have a match in a 401k
Mhm.
and you just took whatever money that it cost you to run your comic, is it going to beat 9.4%? And I'm
Right.
not saying don't do a comic. I'm saying understand your opportunity cost, understand how complicated it is to make money, and also do the math and say, what number am I okay with getting a return on? Or you could get a negative return on it. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that people really have to understand. And so if you can only afford a cover artist who's $300, then that's what
Get
you
that $300 cover artist. Exactly. Uh, exactly. And it's just business, everybody who's out there. Like, and you have to like I've had people shun me for that, like, because I think I do my research, I got my degrees in business, and people are like, "Oh, well, you don't need business to learn how to run a business." You're right, you don't need business degrees to learn how to run a business.
I don't have
However, there
one.
was a lot of shit that I did not know. So I was like, you know what? Let me go to school for this so I can learn.
I
And now there's a lot of shit that I know because I did that. And that's not
there's
everybody's path, you know.
I mean,
That's
I'll be
why I
very
like for
honest.
yeah,
I
like me and you
run a
talk all the
business.
time, and I know you didn't go to business school. You have me and you talk all the time because you know what you're talking about, and there's a lot of other people that I know
I'm
who
not
didn't go
an
to business school, and they know what
I
they're
also
talking about.
act like a CIO, a chief investment officer.
Yeah,
I did not go to school for that either. I'm a
yeah,
political science major, guys, and I'm working in accessibility, and I did not go to school for that either.
yep,
So my point is that I've learned business the hard way. I've learned business the
mhm,
tough way. I've made plenty of bad mistakes. I've made
mhm,
plenty of bad investments. But the bad investments that I made are the greatest investments I've ever made because guess what? There's a
learn,
saying: if you're a trader on Wall Street, the best trade that you'll ever make is when that trade is going south because it is the first one, and then you know when to get out. You know
yep.
when to get out. And if you're a trader and you have a bad trade, you don't pile more money in. You know that the first bad trade you make is the best trade you'll ever make in your
Yep.
life.
Yeah, it is all about because I even though I do have my degree, like I was learning stuff before I decided to change my degree because I was doing art and media art and animation is what I was doing initially. Um, so I was learning the business side then, and then I was like, let me go into business because I started thinking about the big picture and contracts and understanding how other businesses operate. And going through business school for me, I learned that businesses are cutthroat as fuck. Like businesses, for anybody out there that thinks that a business is going to come to you and option you for a movie and then hold your hand and guide you through and say, it's okay, we'll keep your character safe. No. Businesses, their first priority is to make money. And if they option you and they feel like they can't make money on their product at that moment, or feel like you making comics while they're trying to make a movie is actually hindering them from making more money, they will either shelve your product or tell you no longer make comics or tell you not to make comics. I mean, and what I go through, because like a lot of people's like, well, that doesn't make sense. And I'll raise this counter argument. Now
I'm
you
gonna
got me
raise one
counter
too.
arguing. DC did it with CW because they wanted to use Harley Quinn, and they were like, no, 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 no. We're doing a Suicide Squad movie. You can't use her. and they didn't let them use certain
I'll
characters
drop something
within the
even
TV
bigger.
show for Arrow. So if they can do that to their own stuff, they'll definitely do it to you. So
So I'll raise you
mhm,
up one.
mhm.
So what is one of the biggest retailers in the United States? Just
Walmart.
yeah.
Yeah,
What is Walmart known for that most people don't know what
they're
Walmart's known for?
the rollback or what the rollback prices? Is that
No, 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 no.
what?
Walmart is known for that
Uh-huh.
nobody speaks about for buying products and shelving it
Yeah,
because it competes
yeah,
with their brand, and they would
yeah.
rather give somebody $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 so they can't sell it for a year. And they would rather say,
Mhm,
we'll just buy a bunch of, we'll produce the product, but it's
mhm.
cheaper for us to produce the product, not sell it. And so now we don't have you competing.
Exactly. Another prime example too, I guess this one you could add in. Google does that a lot too. I don't know if people pay attention to that, but there's a reason why Google runs around buying up all these startups. One, because if that startup explodes and becomes a direct competitor with them, then they have a problem. And I know a lot of people say, "Well, that's a monopoly." No, no, because while you have Google, you still have Safari, you still have Opera, you still have Brave, you still have Internet Explorer, you still got Microsoft, you still got Apple, so they're not monopolizing anything. They're just stopping direct competition with them, and that's not a monopoly because there's still other
And,
businesses
and
out there
also,
directly
also Apple
competing
does
with
it,
them.
Facebook
Yeah,
does
Apple
it,
does it, Facebook does it.
Microsoft
Yep,
does it. I mean,
yep,
and
they all do it.
everybody knows what's going on with Microsoft right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, did you know? I'm actually
I
asking.
I heard a little bit, but yeah, if you want to
No,
talk
no,
about
no,
it,
no,
go
no.
ahead.
I mean, the big thing. It's not a secret. They're in
Mhm.
the process of buying Activision,
Yeah.
and that,
Yep.
that that was like a year ago out, and
Mhm.
supposedly it was delayed by a week.
Yeah.
It's going to go through. I mean, it's
Yeah.
they're buying Activision for $69 billion. That's a pretty big merger.
That's
That's a
that's hefty.
pretty big acquisition or
That's hefty.
acquiring mode. But I
Just like
digress.
even with Apple, like because a lot of people, like not most recently, they've been working on this for a while, but they're even moving into the gaming console to where they're gonna start making Macs to where they're like gaming PCs with this new chip that they have that's coming out. So that happens a lot. Like they compete against each other all the time. So when a little itty bitty tiny business comes in and is like showing some type of competition, they're like, "Hey, buy them," and they'll buy it, use it if it's good, or shelve it if it's not. And that's the cutthroat side of business that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah,
They just think, "I want a movie from my comic book," and it's like, you may never see that movie. Like, that movie may come out when you're long gone because then they don't have to pay anyone, and I guarantee you somewhere in that contract is gonna be somewhere in there written. That's why you please get a lawyer. Please get a lawyer. But I guarantee you somewhere in that contract, it'll probably be written that once you, the creator, passes on, they get full rights. That's how a lot of these companies have gotten their IPs.
they've
So
gotten their IPs, and then they've also bought and out companies that have gone
exactly. Well,
bankrupt.
no,
I mean,
no.
look at
Yep.
Aftershock. Let's talk about that because that's
Mhm.
to me the most interesting. So this is what I think is going to happen. Aftershock has, I think, 10 million in cash and 50 million in liabilities is what I've heard or what people are estimating. And
Holy crap.
estimating. Because they put a lot of money into, IPs and producing television shows and movies and they put way too much money into it, right?
Yeah.
Versus Dark Horse, who was smart about how to throw out their money, and then Dark
Yeah.
Horse sold itself purposely for a good reason. Brilliant, brilliant company. So
Yeah.
fucking smart. So fucking smart. They sold themselves, but they didn't sell anything valuable because all the
Yeah.
stuff that's valuable in Dark Horse is licensed. It's
Yeah.
so sick. It's so
It
sick.
is.
Brilliant. It's
It
brilliant.
is. And they got it like and people don't know they got a license to Marvel. Like, sure, you can make our comics.
It's so brilliant. It's so brilliant. IDW has a license too, apparently, to Marvel.
Yeah.
Don't figure that one out,
Yep.
right?
They do too. Yep,
But
they do
but
too. I forget which book it is, but yeah, they got a license over there
they
too.
do the
And then
Star Wars stuff, the
okay.
cool High Republic stuff from and then they do some Disney stuff.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I digress right there. But my point is that that's what I think is going to happen is that if you're a comic company and let's say that you're Titan, right? Titan Comics, maybe you can buy an Aftershock property right now, and then maybe it becomes property of Titan Comics.
Yeah.
And you know what it is? Maybe the creator will get first shot at it, but maybe they can't afford to buy their thing, and now they don't have it. And guess what? Or maybe Aftershock has so much debt that it's going to be in bankruptcy court, and it's going to be a forced sale, and it's going to be a bidding war. And now all of a
Yeah,
sudden, you might get an Aftershock comic book in DC Comics or Marvel, or you
exactly.
might get it in Image. You might get it
Exactly.
owned by somebody who if you have $6 million, you might be able to buy the rights to it.
Yeah, because
And that's what's crazy.
they're flip so heavy now, they're probably gonna get cannibalized. Like, I hate to say that, but it's very possible because they're flipped. They're literally that when people when you hear, oh man, I'm upside down in debt, like you're upside down. They are literally upside down right now, quite literally.
There's only two ways it can go. Either they are going to file. I mean, they file for bankruptcy, which basically
Mhm,
allows them to restructure and figure things out.
mhm.
But either they're going to have a bunch of investors come in, or they're going to take out a bunch of bonds, or they're going to have a restructuring, or new money's going to come in, or some company's going to come in and say, "Well,
Or
we
they're
want to
like,
buy you," and then they're
yeah,
going to repurpose debt and make people whole. Bankruptcy is
mhm.
a whole complicated thing.
Oh yeah,
Patrick Boyle, if you're interested in it, has a great video on it. I am not paid to say that. I just like him because I think he's really good at what he does on YouTube. And he's good if you know nothing about finance. He's really good if you're like a newbie and you want to explain so that you could sit down and have a conversation with somebody and seem like you're not stupid. It's
yeah,
always a nice thing when somebody on YouTube makes you feel like you're an equal and that they're
yeah,
trying to educate you in
yeah,
a nice way versus having a pompous attitude. But
yeah.
I do want to get back to prices because I'm not cheap either. People try to beat me up on my ad rates on this show, and I'm like, well, you know what? It's like 15, $20 for a live read because I know exactly what I bring. I know that this
Hmm.
thing stays up forever. I
Hmm.
know that in the long run that it's going to do all right, and I look at the future, not the past.
Exactly.
And
And this is another thing too. And I'm glad you brought that up. This is another thing too that folks have to understand.
I'm
For the
free
folks
for you.
the
If
folks
you
that are
want to call me tonight and we could go
yeah,
meet because that's what we do. We meet
yeah,
under the Brooklyn Bridge, not
yeah,
the east
exactly,
side,
right.
but the west side. I want to make that crystal. Maybe you'd like to join us. It's the west side, not the
Yep.
east side. The east side on Tuesdays is for the clowns or
Hmm.
the Secret Star Wars Society. They alternate weeks.
Yep.
We had to negotiate it. They
Yep.
wanted one side, we wanted the other, so we came to
Hmm.
a truce before we had to do some nefarious things. But anyway,
Exactly.
continue.
Yeah. But like but like a lot of people, like you said, complain with you, oh, that price is too expensive. Like right now, folks, it's not the day of the newspaper. I mean, there's newspapers still around. So for those who are there's newspapers, yeah, you're right, there are. But what I mean when I say it's not the day of the newspaper, where newspaper ads, magazine ads, every time they had a different issue, they would have a different ad, so on and so forth. Right now, we're in the age of, in a sense, immortality because of the way the internet is. So if Andrew did your ad on his show and you pay for that ad, it's immortal because that episode is always there until he takes it down. So every time someone watches your stuff, they're going to be seeing your ad. So to complain about the pricing where you're going to literally get an immortal publication, immortal promoting is very outlandish. Like even when I'm gonna start doing ads in my comics for other comic creators or individuals who have companies or podcasts and they want to do an ad, and yeah, my prices are going to be fairly decent because I want to be able to, if you do ads, I want to be able to order a restock and stuff like that based off of ad revenue. But that's immortal because your ad will stay in that book and that issue forever. Every reprint, your ad will always be in there. So you're immortally getting promoted. So it's kind of weird that people are like, no, what you're charging? Even like, like even some people are like, what? $25? Like, what do you think you should pay $2 to stay in here immortally? To okay, we do that. If I'll let you pay $2, but you will be in one print of that stack of books, and that will be the only time you show up. You
No, no,
know,
no.
so
I know
it's
shows.
you know,
I know shows
mhm,
that rotate their ads. I
yeah,
know shows
you
that do
know,
that, and I know that
yeah,
they're charging. I mean, look, they might have 10. What they do is that it's 10,000 downloads.
yeah,
Let me break down a concept for everybody about how much 10,000 downloads can be. So if it's complicated. So what it could be is a download or a play because they're interchangeable to me. I think it's either one or the other. It doesn't really matter. It could be that somebody comes across it, they listen to it for 2 seconds, they don't even get to the ad. That
yeah,
counts.
Yeah.
So you could say, well, Andrew, you only have 40 plays on a video. But guess what? What happens next year when that's 60? What happens the year after that? And then all of a sudden, what starts happening when,
Exactly.
now your thing and your ad is next to A, it's next to B, it's next to C. And guess what? It's now in play and your ad stays there forever. And now, whenever
Exactly.
somebody Googles that person, and look, you know what is? I'm not opposed also for charging more. So if
Exactly.
there's an anime company that wants to advertise, I might say, look, I'm having these 15 top voice actors on. It's going to be $35 because they're well
Yeah.
worth it. And I know
And
that
that's and to be honest with y'all, that's not a bad price, especially considering how much it costs to get in a newspaper or a magazine or on television. Hell, even with Hulu, and they did advertisement for small business, and that's still not a bad price. You know, I never understood how folks would get mad with something like you'll tell them 25,
this
25 for a
is
quarter, 50 for
we
half,
were speaking about this. We were speaking about
Mhm.
even charging to be on somebody's show. I did a whole
Yeah,
interview. It opened up a bunch of stuff, and people said, "Well, there's no guarantee." And
there's always
my
guarantee
my
with the
my
internet.
what this guy, it's
Mhm,
Russ Cassaway. I don't mind
mhm,
saying his name because it's not good or bad either way. But he's
mhm.
like, "Oh, there's no guarantee." And Tyler Carpenter, who I did the interview with, and he was interviewing me, and I was the guest. Well, Tyler said it back to my Twitter. He said, "Well, there's no guarantee on a cover." And we were
Exactly.
speaking. I brought that point up during that whole interview. And the point that I'm getting at here is that you pay for a cover artist, you pay for a
Mhm.
table at a con, you pay to print your book, you pay your artist. I mean, if I'm $25, if I'm $20, you're paying everybody else anyway. So maybe it's time that you paid me too. Seriously,
Yeah,
to be quite
exactly.
honest, because you're paying everybody else. And what I think it is that, and this is one of those moments of truth, it's very controversial. I think what it is that everybody has come to the conclusion saying, well, I'm being on your show and you're getting content and I get the chance to promote my book, and they think that contract, which has been in place for the last 30 years, is the same. And I think the
Yeah,
contract has evolved. I don't think
it
it's
has.
that way anymore. I think COVID has changed it. And let's be realistic. And I think that there's so much money involved, and you're paying everybody else a boatload of money. When the
Mhm.
average book costs $6,000 to produce, and you're paying everybody else, and you think you can come on my show for free, I
Yeah.
mean, my new
I'll,
answer to people. Sorry to let me finish, just
oh
please.
no, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
I'm offended. God damn it. No. I think it's about time when you cross a certain line of
Mhm.
how much money you're spending, or you're spending 10 grand, or you're spending $1,400 on a cover artist. At this point, you know what is? It's $20. You
Yeah,
spend enough money that you have to pony up money for me too, and that's where
exactly.
it's at. And I know people don't like it. I don't. People
Yeah,
hate
they
it.
don't. Because a lot of people think that the media should just be free, and a lot of people do it for free, and I get that. Like even my show, the Bridge, I do free. I do interviews, but I also select who I want to interview. So there's that. So even if I put stuff out there and say, hey, we're looking for people to interview, I select who I want to interview. So there's that, But in the same vein, if I start doing ads on
That's
that
another
show,
thing
you're
too.
gonna have to
That's
you're gonna have
another
to pay
thing
for that,
too.
Mhm.
Is that this is one of the things is that I said, wait a second, what about, there's plenty of people who have shows and they've been on my
Mhm.
show, never invited me on theirs. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what the fuck? What
yeah.
the fuck?
And
In which
I bet they're the ones too that say you shouldn't charge me to be on your show, but never invited you to theirs.
it's not even that. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
great. So you have openly said you don't want to pay. So I got an idea. Let's do an interview exchange.
Yeah.
I've openly said that too. I said, look, bring
Mhm.
me something of value. Let's do an interview exchange. I'll interview you, you interview me. It will be good. I'll get into your audience. I like being interviewed. I like talking about, stuff that's a little interesting. I'm more than
Mhm.
happy. And you know what is? It's nice. I appreciate interview exchanges because to me now we're exchanging currency. Currency
Exactly.
is not money. Currency could
Mhm.
be anything.
One
And
of the
so
most
that's where I'm
I
at.
would say one of the highest currencies, at least for me, is time. you know and then even whenever I do make monetary prices, I base it off my time. So a lot of people are like, well, why do you charge that? Because of my time. Because if I'm having to stop something or stop writing, stop working, stop inking, stop working with the editing, the comics because I'm EIC also. So I got books that I have to edit, not only mine, but other creatives' books, stopping business meetings to deal with you. I'm going to charge you for my time. And that's not me being a dickhead. That's just me being real because I guarantee if you try to talk to Bill Gates, he's going to charge for his time unless you are equal to Bill Gates,
It's
and that's just how
interesting.
it is.
I could tell you that people have no idea what my time is worth. No.
Yeah.
I actually have it down to a number. I know what my hourly rate is. Between my job and my knowledge on a boatload of topics, and I do side hustles at night. Right now, not to make anybody feel bad, but when I do an interview, I give up doing a side hustle. And you might say, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
Andrew, you're only making 50 cents on your side hustle every day." But
Mhm.
guess what? When I'm doing 50 cents for 30 days straight, I then take that money, I can invest it, and then I could
Mhm.
create perpetuity because I invest in good growth dividend stocks that pay me
Exactly.
monthly. So it is a lot of money. It's a lot of
Mhm.
money because it's not a lot of money today. It's a lot of money tomorrow. Now, I don't
Yep.
mind giving up my time because what I'll do is that, and then I'll wake up. So I'll break this down real quick. When I do interviews, I then wake up at 6 in the morning so I could do my passive income thing to get my 50, 60, 70 cents. And that's what I do before I go to work. So I will wake
Yep.
up 2 hours earlier because I'm doing this for 2 hours. And there's sacrifice involved. And I don't think
A lot of
people really
sacrifice.
understand. And then when people whine and bitch, I'm like, wait a second. It's expensive in life. But
Yeah.
again, I agree. At this
Yeah.
point, I'm interviewing whoever I want. If I don't
Yeah.
really want to interview you on my show, there was about 3 people that I did not want on my show this year. And they asked, and I was just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. It was November. I'm like, I'm not feeling it. I don't really want to have you on my show. And I'll be real honest. People ask me and they're difficult. And I'm gonna be like, look, I'm not feeling it, but this is my rate.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be high. It's gonna be like 60, $70.
Yeah.
And if they got a problem, I'm like, it's my time. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Like it's time. It's an interesting thing. It's a real interesting thing. Like
You're
I
trying to figure out how to answer politically.
yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. But it's like
I'll give a thought on this. I'll give a thought
and
on this. So
mhm.
I come
Go
from
ahead.
the stock world. I love stocks. I'm a personal investor. Obviously I've added big into crypto, big into bonds, a bunch of other stuff, big into real estate shares, all sorts of weird stuff that makes money. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that the entire stock market has come into is a concept called order flow. And this is what I think is going to happen with podcasting. I think it's not here yet, but it's going to be here in the next 10 years. Is that you're going to have a concept called order flow where every podcast is either going to be paid for, it's going to cost you money, it's going to be pay to play, or it's going to be completely free, but there's going to be so much ads. Whereas whoever figures out how to do this and figures out to say, look, do you want an ad for $1? Or if you want an ad for $100, and based on the show, based on what you're looking for, that there's going to be a constant order flow of ads. So you're going to have shows that go for an hour that have 10 ads in them. And every 7 minutes, and whoever figures out how to do that and do it almost automatic is going to be a trillionaire because
Yeah.
they're going to solve a massive problem on both sides. So it's either going to
Yeah.
be pay to play or it's going to be order flow. And when it's order flow, it's going to suck. It's
Yeah.
going to suck because what's going to happen is you're going to have somebody like me who's going to load up his show every 7 minutes on an hour and 20 interview. So 80 minutes, you're going to have 11 ads. Every 7 minutes, I'm like, great question. Now from our sponsor over here, and it's going to be $3. And so now every single show, and people are going to be like, this breaks up the show. And be like, well, I got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And
You
then
gotta pay for
you
it.
guys asked for this. And that's what everybody doesn't seem to get is you're
Yeah.
going to have so much order flow and
Yeah.
everybody's going to do it.
And
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 yeah,
and I think I figured out how to say it now. One of the things that I've noticed when it comes to folks is everybody likes to compare to bigger companies, especially when it comes to small companies. And it's not just comic book companies, it's any type of small company, mom and pop restaurant, mom and pop cake shop, little startup car dealership, all sorts of stuff. People always want to compare it to the big guys. Um, but what folks don't understand is like they'll look at it and say, well, you're not this person, or why can't you do what they're doing? Those individuals, what you're seeing now, you're seeing them in a prosperity phase. Like they're there now. We're trying to get there. you know. So for us to do what they're doing is actually going to put us under the dirt. And that's the reason why a lot of businesses fail, because they're like, oh, well, I gotta if they have a restaurant, I gotta compete with the 5-star restaurant up the road. You just started. Work your way to that point. Like, it's not like, there's a lot of stories and stuff that I learned. That's the reason why I said when I went to my business degree, could I have read them on my own? Sure. But of course, um, going through my degree, of course, they give you the book, okay, read this book, or, you know, study this. This is what we're going to be talking about today. So you learn so much stuff, like learned about Walmart, learned about the truth behind Walmart. Because a lot of people, one thing people know is Walmart and rollback prices. That's the only thing people know now. Like the thing that you brought up, that's something people don't know. Another thing that people don't know is that Walmart almost came to a point where they weren't going to exist, because they lost their original building and had to start all the way over. And now look where they're at. So it's like what you're seeing is them where they're at now. We are just starting. So it's not going to be the same. It's going to be totally different. It's like if you're on the track, right? And they give someone a 4-lap head start and then tell you to go. And then somebody's like, why didn't you beat them? They had a 4-lap head start. The hell are you talking about? So it's like you have to think about that. Like to compare Sovereign Comics to Marvel Comics, who's been around since the 30s, DC, who's been around since the 20s and 30s. No, they're there. They're where they're at. Some people will argue that they're running themselves into the ground, but they're where they're at. And I'm trying to get there. So it's not going to be the same. Prices aren't going to be the same. The way I do things is going to be the same, because I got to figure out what's going to work for me. And that's how every small business is. And yes, comic book creators who have a publishing company are a small business. Just because we're doing comic books doesn't mean we're millionaires. We are a small. So some of us have millions, but 99% of us do not.
Even,
So
even the ones that are doing 200,000-300,000, a lot of
yeah,
that. I mean, I know
it's
comic
gone.
creators who have done 70,000-80,000 campaigns who are broke.
Hmm.
I know
Yep.
it, and I also know people who have done a $10,000 campaign and they're really, really wealthy.
Yep.
So and they're not wealthy because of their campaign. And they made money on their campaign. They made like a 13% profit range in their campaign.
Hmm.
So you know what it is? It goes to an idea of understanding business. And
Yeah.
and it's a big issue, but again, you know what it is? This is how I view it: is that eventually I think everybody's going to catch up. I think it's coming, and I think an awakening is coming this year. My friend Travis Gibb put up something, and I think I'm going to read it because I have it up. I'll read it quickly. So he said, talk about the State of the Union. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I want to let you know what I predict for Kickstarter 2023 with the changes in self-publishing and small press publishers taking less and less creators, with Aftershock filing bankruptcy and many publishers producing less books. I expect Kickstarter to be very, very, very busy. I expect many creators who have strong fan bases to come onto the platform and create amazing things. These creators will also take eyeballs and dollars from creators that have less of a fan base due to the state of the economy. So as you plan for
Yep.
2023, know that it's going to be a little tougher to raise funds. So bring your A game. Make sure you have the right amount of covers from the right artist. Make sure you don't half-ass it on making sure your Kickstarter design. I think you're going to have to work twice as hard to get the work done this year. If you make a good product, they will buy it.
Mhm.
And so
Exactly.
he goes on, but I
Mhm.
think he's partially right. But I also think that even if you do work twice as hard, I mean, I think really what this is going to come down to is what are your relationships? I think the
Exactly.
R word is a big word right now, and I think he didn't say it. He didn't say it in his post, but I think that's the one thing that I took
Yeah.
out of that post is
And that's
not.
why and that's one of the things I kind of want to talk about, but then I kind of don't, because I don't want people, because I've had a lot of copycats and a lot of people ask me questions and I give them the answer and then they'll be like, I figured this out on my own. So there's some things I kind of want to say. That's the reason why and also to go back to the charging, that's the reason why I charge for my time too. Because if I charge you to get that information from me, and if you go out there and say, I figured it out on my own, I could say, Yeah, they figured it out on their own because I won't care. You pay me. so, so that's another reason why I'm charging for that.
No,
But
no, no. This is
ultimately,
what I think is that I think a
mhm,
lot of people don't have relationships, and this is why I'm now saying, look,
yeah,
you did a year and a half ago 30,000, and you're barely scratching 20.
yeah. It's like because that's one of the things I've really concentrated on, and I know you see it. Like you saw it with the podcast. Like I have relationship with people. Like I always leave that door open for folks who get my books. And typically that's how I know who read my books because usually the individuals who bought them and read them always say something back. Either even if it's like, hey, I felt like this was kind of slow, blow, they always say something back. And when people don't say something about, I'm just like, okay, they probably haven't gotten around to read it yet. Which I know there's a lot of individuals out there who are super comic heads, and they'll go to New Comic Book Day, and then they're on Kickstarter on Tuesdays and buying up all of these books. So they got like freaking refrigerator high stacks of books that they got to read through, and they may not get to it. And I get that, but that's one of the things that I try to keep open is my relationships with my readers. And I talk to them, and I built a community, and I even have a cosplay community that's connected to two other cosplay communities, one in the Bahamas and another one that's about to be national that my cosplay community is connected to, and then on top of that, I'm moving my books to like how he was saying that there's going to be a lot of shifting and a lot of changing. For me, I realize, hey, with this community that I have, which is pretty freaking massive, I'm changing things to a subscription service and making it to where they get a lot of exclusive stuff that everybody else isn't going to get, which is dope. Not dope, not like the 90s word for drugs, but like just dope.
Yeah, see. I'm different. I'm different. Like, I like not having a community, just being like a nomad on
Mhm.
this. Like, I know
Yeah.
people
Like,
watch this. I know people pay
mhm,
attention, and I know the people who are paying attention are really interested in what I'm saying because the people
mhm.
who have an idea what the fuck I'm doing, they're like, "Oh shit, why is he doing what he's doing, and how is he doing it?" But also, I'm shifting out of this collectively. I'm
Yeah.
really shifting out of comics, and I'm actually
Mhm,
shifting into some other things that are way more interesting. My
mhm,
eBay business is definitely a focus more this year. Because I'll
mhm.
be really honest. I mean, I'm really focusing on money now and some other
Nice.
stuff. So, you know what it is at the end of the day, it's like, and even just like sports card collecting and stuff. So like, not saying I'm leaving this, but I don't really care. I don't because what I've been told in the last year, since last January, um, is people have constantly challenged me on so many things that turned out to be correct. What happened with Indiegogo was shadow banning, and what happened on Kickstarter with books getting banned. And I'm like, you gotta get off. And people openly challenged me on interviews in the comment section. And I'm like, well, I guess this is not really people paying attention. And
And it's
here we
like,
go.
and I think a lot of the, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think a lot of the people who challenged you too were like the ones who were probably benefiting from it, to be honest with you. Because there was a lot, because like I know with Kickstarter, there's a lot of times, and they still do it, where they'll push certain books more than they'll push others. And that's one of the reasons why I left, because like I said, it became clicky. And I'm trying to make money, not because I want to be rich. I mean,
I
I don't.
do.
Yeah, I want to be rich. I don't
Yeah.
want to be famous, but I want to be rich. But in the same vein, the more money I make, the more books I can put out for my community, and for me,
No,
that
no, no,
matters.
no.
You
I'll
know.
be very honest. I got no problem admitting it. I want to make money because the more money I make, the more free I am,
Well,
and
there's
the
that. Yeah,
more
there's that too.
the more I don't have to put up with stupidity and bullshit.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know, I put up a post the other day. I said, I don't know what everybody else is doing, but I'm working on my first billion, and I don't have time to deal with your drama or your stupidity
yeah,
because I
exactly.
don't. I'm sorry. I want more money, not because I want to, take over the world, but because if I
Mhm.
had like $6 million in the bank and I hate my job, I don't have to go.
Exactly.
If I had $6 million
And then,
and I
and
want to
then
go
if you're
on
smart with
vacation,
money, you can take that 6 million and triple, quadruple.
no, if you're really
Just
smart with that money, what you do is you shut up,
yeah.
you invest it correctly, and you go to your job and you just pretend it doesn't exist. If you're really
You
smart,
know, you'd be so mad. They're like put some paper in the printer. Fuck, I'm a millionaire. The fuck am I doing? Why am I here?
You just smile, you just keep your head down,
Yep.
you don't worry about a damn thing, and you just stay in. You stay in for your 401k, and then
Mhm.
maybe you retire when you're 55, not 65.
Yep.
And you keep your head down, you drive a beat up car, you get the cheap rice, not the expensive rice. You
Mhm.
got the sushi maybe once a month. Once a month,
That's how you do it. That's why I say I'd rather be rich than famous. Because when you're famous, you have to keep those optics of being famous. So you gotta buy the nice cars and get the big house because you're famous. Like that's why I say I'd rather be rich than famous. Screw famous. Like I don't want that.
See,
I
see,
don't
see,
want
I've
that.
come to the conclusion. I do not want to be famous. I will never be famous. In case anybody hasn't realized, I am not a pretty cosplayer. I do not have that. I haven't written a book yet. Um, I don't have a massive audience, but I'm gonna become rich. That's crystal clear. With what I'm doing, I'm planning to build a business, if not two this year. I have an eBay
Nice.
business that's slowly growing, and you know what it is? I'll be real honest. I'd rather have money. I'd rather have money.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to a con. Years ago, all I wanted to do was be a guest at a con. That's all I wanted.
Mhm.
That's all I wanted was to be in the program. And now
It's
I'm at the
go ahead.
stage where I don't care. I just want to be paid. I just want to be
Right.
paid. And I want to be paid nicely if I go to a con. I don't need to be a
Yeah.
guest. I just want to be paid. And that's where
And,
I'm at.
and for folks who are probably like, well, why does he want to be paid? Like I said, your time is probably the biggest. So I mean, you want to be paid for your time. Time you can never get back. So imagine doing something for free. Now you can't get that back. And that's honestly the reason why I decided to start charging because I would do things for free, give people help. And now I can't get that time back. And then they're out here running around. I figured it out by myself. So okay, I'm gonna charge your asses now. Now you can say it. I don't care.
That's how I
So
feel about shitty interviews is that,
yeah.
it is some people understand. So I've had some very, very interesting voice actors on. And they're like, yeah, I'll
Mhm.
be on your show. Why wouldn't I be? There's value here. You know what you're doing. You're gonna prep up. And like they're like, yo, and then like I send them the questions like, dude, like what the fuck? Like you actually know what the hell you're talking about. Very interesting, and they're happy to be because you know what is they're successful, and that's the other thing too that I've learned: is successful people will talk. So I have been on shows and people have taken a risk. And like, oh my God, I'm glad I took the risk. But I'm successful talking about eBay, talking about alternative
Yeah.
investing, that I love doing that for free because
Yeah.
I have a wealth of knowledge. And to me, there's value.
Mhm.
Because if I could reach one and like even like the hosts were like, oh my God, like you just gave so much insight into something. And so he's like, dude, like we were supposed to talk for 20 minutes. We had to speak for an hour. It's like, no, I'm not going to edit any of this. Super interesting conversation. And it's coming out, I think in like 2 weeks at that interview.
That's
But
cool.
you see me tweeting about this stuff,
Mhm.
but I digress. I digress. But
No. I
yeah,
think for me, the only time is like now, like I'll give information if I'm on a podcast. Like if I'm on your show or I'm doing one of my episodes or I get invited to another show, and then I'll drop like those nuggets of information, but DMing me for stuff now? No. Unless we're like unless we're cool. Like if I'm cool with the person, like for instance, if you're part of the Soverse writing team, like you my brain is open for you. And then there's other people too in the indie comics world who I still talk to daily. Like they'll still come to me with questions, and I'm like, oh yeah, try this, do that. Have you looked into this? Have you tried? And I'm still helpful because that's just me as a person. But it's like I just had to figure out a way to where it will benefit me a little bit because, like I said, I
nobody
got
asks
tired
my
of
opinion.
yeah.
Nobody asks my opinion anymore. It's all right. I'm like,
It's 'cause-
shouldn't have
that's
done that. Shouldn't have
that's
done
because they're
that.
mad. You know what I did? And I think I talked about this on one of your one of the episodes where I was on with you. But this is what I did. I was like, hey, I'm gonna start charging just to see who would stop asking questions. And those individuals who stopped asking questions, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. You were just here for the free juicy stuff. But then some other people kept like, hey, I have this question. How much are you charging? And I'm like, don't worry about it. That was just a test to see who would stop. And like a lot of people stopped. Like a lot of people unfollowed me. They stopped. They don't like my content anymore. They don't talk to me anymore. None of that. But then you still have other people who still ask questions and still talk. And those individuals I help.
Oh,
for the free. And a
I'm
lot of them are the ones who are running over to like, hey, well, I'm gonna sign up for this so that I can get more information from you. So it's like you, in a sense, you kind of you cut the fat, you know, in a sense.
you
So
know, I'm how do I put this the nicest way? So if I have an
mhm,
issue with you and I don't want to associate, I'll just leave. I'll just leave. Problem solved. Easier. Honestly, I won't engage with you. I won't talk to
mhm,
you, and
mhm.
you won't know because I know it's gonna drive you crazy. I know it's gonna drive you crazy, and I could just sit there and smile and wait. And there's been plenty of people who know. They may or may not be watching right now. I don't know. And my point is that I will just not engage. I will not engage, and it will be a war of attrition, and you will not win. And when I feel good and ready, I will strike. I will strike when you are at your weakest, and when it's just a little tap and down the stairs you go. It'd be because I don't forget. I don't forget. I don't forget
I-
all the wrongs that have been done to me. I don't. I got no problem saying that. I'll just
yeah, for me,
wait
even
my turn.
like for me, even the ones who, and I think that maybe this is the southern side of me, the southern hospitality side of me. But even the ones who done me wrong, I wish them the best. It's like I wish you the best, but I know it's not going to happen because you did people dirty to get to where you're at. But I wish you the best.
Yeah.
So,
See, I'm not gonna get in your way,
mhm,
but you're not gonna get off scot free because if you attacked me, right? So
mhm,
if we disagree on something, it's different than attacking me. So if you attacked me, you attacked my show,
yeah,
you decided to troll my show. There will be
yeah,
a day where this comes back in which that we you will have to pay Piper his due.
you have to.
And it's just a matter of when, and it's a matter of when I collect. But they know it because if you don't know it, then you're clearly not playing in the world that the
Exactly.
rest of us play in. Whatever you give to me, you will get back. And people have
Yeah.
learned that. Somebody who
It's
trolled my
like,
Kickstarter, he was running one, and I gave it back to him, and
yep,
it was fun. And anytime
it's-
you run something, I'm going to give it right back to him,
yep.
and I'm going to be like, "Cool, man. Funny you're running a Kickstarter. How you doing?" It was a
It is,
blast.
and I'm gonna drop some jewels for y'all. I don't know how much longer. Yeah, because I got to get rid. I got to. Yeah, I got to do something. But I'm gonna drop some jewels. Karma is infinite, people, not finite, but infinite. And what I mean by that is, if you do someone dirty, it may not like, we all see these memes of instant karma where someone may pour out someone's soda and then all of a sudden the soda can hits them in the head or something. Instant karma. That's not how karma works. Like, yeah, how karma works. You'll screw somebody over to get high, to get where you're at, and then all of a sudden you go bankrupt. That's how karma works. So keep that in mind as you're stepping on backs and heads to get to your point. And I
The
know there's a lot of who
Undertaker
do it, but really keep that karma is infinite.
the
And
Undertaker said it really well. The toes you step on climbing your way up are the asses you're going to kiss on the way back down. And I
exactly.
think a lot of people in comics are learning that because a lot of people have run relationships with me and they didn't ask. And I don't know exactly what happened with that. But guess what? I think that in the next few years, if what Travis is right about and all the big boys come on and there's less and less money to go around, you're gonna need me a lot more than I'm gonna need you. And
Exactly. And he's right in what he said. And that's the real one of the other reasons why I stepped away. Because everybody was like, oh well, everybody tried to use the trickle down economics idea pertaining to the big names coming to Kickstarter. And I'm like, trickle down economics don't even work in the real world. So why the hell do you think it's gonna work on Kickstarter? Like people, when they come to the Kickstarter, they're not coming to say, "Oh, let me check out all these other independent comics." They're gonna say, "What? Keanu Reeves is making a comic book? Okay, let me go back his comic book. What? What? You Todd McFarlane is doing another action figure. Let, let me go to Kickstarter and back his action figure." They're not gonna be like, "Hey, let me go over here to this independent comic I've never heard of, and order this."
I
They're not gonna do
agree.
that.
I agree that the trickle down economics didn't work on Kickstarter. I think to some
Mhm,
degree it works in the real world, meaning
mhm.
that it is you need investment banks to back top projects to some degree, and that's a form of trickle down economics.
I can agree with that
It
part.
does
Yeah, I
work
like that.
because
Yeah.
if you don't have a bailout to Marriott that's going to go
Mhm.
bankrupt that employs 46,000 people, You need that in that realm. But I get the point, but this is not a political debate. But on Kickstarter, it worked slightly, but we're talking 1%, me being generous. 1%.
And the ones who it really worked for were the ones who were already named, like they were in deadline and people have heard of them, or they were comic creators for Marvel and DC or Image and decided to do a Kickstarter and people knew who they were. Like those are the ones that it worked for.
Or there was a few things where the idea was so ridiculous and the comic was fun that it was on the bottom.
Yeah.
Like, you'll see fun, and let's back it. And then they got an extra grand, which is a big deal because if
especially for a small publisher, indie guy,
if your normal was 2,500 and you did $4,000, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
that's a big deal. And it might not seem like a big deal in the scheme of life, and it's not per se in the scheme of life. If you had to choose between doing an extra 1,500 or having your firstborn, clearly the firstborn should be the priority of being a bigger milestone. But as far as the creator goes, all jokes aside, but yeah, I do want to get to talk about Stars though, because we didn't get to talk about that. Stars is my favorite out of the bunch. I love teen idols singing.
I'm actually in the process of inking issue 2 right now. Yes, folks, I actually do art as well. So I'm actually inking that book. It is looking freaking amazing. If you want to see those inks, because I will post them on my Instagram, panel by panel. But if you want to see them, check out my Patreon where they're already there for folks to see. Actually, I think I might go live one day up there and do some inking and let folks see it. That'd be dope. But anywho, back to Stars. So issue 2 is being worked on. It's being inked. I have my main penciler. He's ready to get to work. We're about to finish the rest of the half of this book. The colorist is already ready to go. And that issue is going to come out. And this issue is issue 1 was fun. You got to meet the girls. Yes, it's an all-girl independent rock band, but they also double as superheroes. Like I said, I tell story first. So because they're women, they're not going to win all the time. I say that because we see that. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I am a person who was in the military, trained how to fight, and I would never ever walk into a dojo as a white belt and challenge the 4th degree black belt. Like I wouldn't personally do that. There are some people who are off their rocker who may, but I wouldn't personally do that. So in a sense, I take that attitude and put it into my characters, which I think is one of the reasons why people love manga so much, is because you see a character go from being this small fry to this super powerful individual. I would say save for Goku, but Goku in Dragon Ball, he was kind of weak, and then he started getting stronger. So even Goku, but you see that in these characters, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people love manga so much. So that's one of the things that I bring to my story, save for Cypher Team, because Cypher Team has been doing it for a while. However, this is a new team we're dealing with, so they're working together, but they're going to have their rockiness because they never fully work together. But in Stars, same thing. They've never done the hero thing. This is new for them. They only caught like small time, purse stealers and ATM robbers and small time stuff. So in issue 1, they actually meet a big villain who has substantial powers. She's a speedster. Her speed is labeled Speed of Dark, so she can control shadows, she can transport through shadows and all this other stuff. They've never dealt with that before, so they, in a sense, get their asses handed to them until they can figure out how to stop this individual, how to fully work as a team so they can stop this individual. So you start seeing that in issue 2, where the I'm not gonna say she's the self-proclaimed team leader, because she doesn't want the position. She's like, nope, I don't want it. And that's because of past drama for herself, where she was put into a leadership position and they lost something. Like, not with Stars, but with one of her former teams when she was in sports. So they lost something that was very dear to all of them, and since then she was like, "Nah, I don't want to lead anything anymore."
Lost the Game
so she
Boy.
just
That's what they lost.
Again, yeah, it was bad because I'll say this. I'll do this. This is on a podcast, and I do like drop a little Easter eggs here and there for you when I'm on your show. So their star player got hurt, and the character who's actually leading the Stars,
this is a little too close to home given last night's game. Too
Yeah,
soon,
yeah,
too
oh,
soon. That was a
yeah,
rough.
woo,
That was crazy.
yeah, it was.
I didn't even
But
see it live. I saw the replay, and it was just like for those who don't know, a player on the Buffalo Bills, and I think
mhm,
he is still in critical condition, but
yeah,
he
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 just
he tackled a player, and then he got up, and then he went down, and he
mhm,
collapsed, and it was not normal,
yeah,
and he had a cardiac arrest, and they
mhm,
got his heart started again, and then they brought him out, but he's still in critical condition as of
yeah,
recording this on January 3rd, and
mhm,
crazy, crazy
yeah.
circumstance.
Wild event. To the point where I've even heard rumor. I guess they're talking about not completing the season. It's a lot of. I don't know how true that is, but it's a lot of stuff going on with that.
Basically, the game is suspended, but
Okay.
I don't know if it matters for these two teams anyway. So they might
Yeah.
not if they're both out of the playoffs and there's no thing, they might because it's week 17.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I don't know how close. Otherwise, they will
Mhm,
play, but they're not going to do anything for a little bit. So they might
yeah.
wind up doing something weird, or it just might be that if neither of these teams has a shot, it might
Mhm,
not make sense, and it might just be a tie, or it just might
yeah.
be just xed out, or it
Yeah.
might just be an S. I don't know, but anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. No worries. But so yeah, like I said, their team lost a championship game because they've been winning for like I think it was like 4 years straight. They've been winning.
They're UConn.
That
They're UConn. The
uh,
women's UConn team, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. And then they lost. And then like this is the crazy part because like I said, the star player got hurt. Siphon, when this in this part, she's young Siphon because she's a teenager. She's a senior also. She's getting scouted. She's like the sixth man of the team, but she's good enough to where the coach is like, get on the court. You need to take this position. You need to lead the team. But she blows a 40 point. I don't mean to laugh. It's messed up. But she blows a 40 point lead. And like, and they lose, right? So I don't mean to laugh. It's horrible. But it messes with her psychologically because she, like I said, she was the sixth man. She wasn't ready for the spotlight yet. And so for her, she takes that as a internal beat. Like, I'm horrible. I'm crappy. They lost because of me. It's my fault type of situation. So she's like, I never want to lead anything again. So she quite literally gets to that point where she's like, I don't want to lead anything. Even though she gave the girls the idea to start the superhero team, she's like, I don't want to lead it. But yeah, maybe we should do it since we all got powers, but I don't want to lead it. But everybody wants her to be the leader because they see that in her. So in issue 2, you actually see her slowly step into the reins of being that leader. And then in issue 3, you actually see her step up. She's like, I'm the leader, and to get to my girls, you're gonna have to go through me in a sense. But it's kind of too late then because something else happens, and that's spoiler. And I don't want to say it because I will say this. Stars is a fun title. They have a rogues gallery. I will give this one. Their rogues gallery is called the Anti-Stars. That's all I'm gonna say. But there's members of the Anti-Stars who are freaking like they quite literally mirror the stars. Like each one of them has some type of hate for the other, for one of the members of stars, and they like one of them grew up with one of the members of stars, and they have like this. Well, they were best friends growing up, but but something happens and is like, hey, I hate you. I'm gonna kill you. And so it's like
So
it's
enough
bad what
about
happens,
that.
but yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
so enough about that.
even to talk a little bit about this before I let you get out of here.
Mhm.
But one of the things is that I think that this is coming out first on Patreon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so right now is getting everything on Patreon. So if you sign up for the Patreon, you're gonna see the entire book get made. I'm talking like I haven't posted the script yet, but I'm gonna post the finished script up there because I wanted to send it to the editor for the book, the editor and the co-editor, because I'm EIC. So yes, even though me being EIC, I still get checked by my editors. I send it to them and we all look through it and make sure I didn't mess up or miss anything because when you're writing it also you kind of get tunnel vision, so you may miss things. So now that those two have read it, I'm gonna put it on the Patreon, and then I'm also gonna load up the pencil pages because I haven't done that yet. But the ink pages are up there, and as these pages are colored, they'll get put on a Patreon. As they're lettered, they'll get put on the Patreon. And you'll quite literally see these books now that are coming being built from script to final on Patreon. It depending on your tier, you'll get it. Well, all the tiers get digital books. So when it's done, I'll say, here's the digital that you can download and keep to yourself. And then on top of that, because I'm moving away from floppies, but if you're a patron, um, once we hit 25 patrons, then I will start sending floppies exclusive to the patrons. So it's like you'll get something that no one else is getting. Because the only floppies I'm doing are issue 1 and issue 2, but 3, 4, 5, and whatever is the rest of that story arc won't be a floppy. It's just issue 1 and issue 1 and issue 2 floppy, and then trade. That's the way I'm doing things. Because one thing I've learned, and we've talked about this too on the show, it's one thing that people really care about a lot. The one things that people will buy, unless you're a book that they really, really are into, is issue 1 and issue 2. People are going to buy those, but in the indie world, the counterbalance to that is I've learned that independent comics tend to do better when we do trades, mainly because of the fact that so many independent comics, and it's not their fault. I'm not going to blame them for this because things happen, money, so on and so forth, where they'll just do one book
It's an
and
interesting
then they're gone.
question.
Yeah, right. So it's like, so a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're indie? Do you have a trade?" And I've been asked that at cons. Do you have a trade? I'm like, no, not yet. So that's when I started research, figuring out, oh, that's what people want more than anything. But they also want issue 1 and issue 2. So,
I've heard it both ways. I have really.
yeah,
I've heard that people love,
mhm.
but also people love issue 3, and they want to know that it's like 100
That is
copies.
going right, and that's the reason why I decided to do the trade like that, and especially push it to Patreon because if you're a patron, you're going to see the book getting made and you're going to get the floppies. If you're not a patron, you'll get the trade when it comes out, but you'll also have issue 1 and issue 2. And I'm still going to post artwork here and there. It's just not going to be as rampant as I used to, because I got to keep my patrons happy and they love exclusivity. Exclusivity. That's one of those weird words. They love.
It's an interesting debate because I've
Mhm.
heard that people still want to do floppies and that people who love comics want
Yeah.
floppies. But I've also heard
Yeah.
that trade
Mhm.
paperbacks are a game changer
Mhm.
because what I've heard is that not so much what you were saying, but when you're at a con and you have a trade paperback, it changes the game and it
Yeah.
creates a perception versus
And
clout is a good word to
yeah.
use.
And it's funny, and that's what I said part of my research. Because remember, I said earlier with the Yamo Stigmata, I did a mini trade of issues 1 and 2 because they were so thick together, like 60 some odd pages. And that's when I kind of like, oh crap. So I had issue 1 and 2 books, like the comics, but then I also had the mini trade. And people are like, oh, is that a trade? What is that a trade of? I'm like, oh, it's a trade of issue 1 and issue 2. And I've had people like they will buy the trade and then buy issue 1 and ask me to sign issue 1. Like one individual actually had me go down to the grading booth with them to sign it there so they can get it graded. But then they also bought the trade and then they had issue 1 and issue 2 and sent those off to be graded. So I was like, yo, that's dope. But a lot of people bought the trades before they bought issue 1 and issue 2. They was like, oh, you got the mini. Well, I'll just buy that. And they bought that before they bought issue 1 and issue 2. So it's interesting. It's like weird. And I'm pretty sure things may change in the future because that's how it is in business. You're always researching, you're always seeing what the environment is, you're always seeing what your community wants, and you try to listen to that if you want to make it, that is. So
It sometimes it's very
mm,
rare that your
yeah,
community is wrong. I've seen it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I've seen communities be like, we were wrong. We're glad. We're glad we did
Mhm,
not go down this route. And I've seen it. I've
yeah,
seen it myself too, where I've been
yeah.
questioned. And you're like, I get it. I get why you're
Mhm.
doing your show your way. And people are like, I don't get it. And then 4 or 5 episodes, like, I got it
I
now.
understand.
But
I
I
get it.
digress. But yeah, no, you got a lot of stuff
Mhm.
going on.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, I don't want to keep you too much longer. We spoke about a lot of stuff, got me in trouble, but I'm gonna get in trouble anyway. I'm gonna get in trouble anyway.
Oh,
Probably not tomorrow, but definitely on
yeah.
Friday, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. For sure. It's gonna be a fun one, guys. I'm talking about AI art, and I am pro AI art.
Uh-oh.
That's the stance I'm taking, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be pissed. I'm sure of it, and it's going to be a blast. But I digress right there. Where can people find you, bother you, hit you up,
Mhm.
disturb you, rob you? beat you with a shillelagh, give you a shillelagh, anything in that nature. We're at your house, we can throw it there as
Yep.
well.
Right,
Buy you a
right.
new
So,
house too.
yeah, please buy me a new house, please. But you can find me on YouTube at Sovereign Comics. I'm on YouTube. Also Instagram at Sovereign Comics. Um, Facebook at Sovereign Comics. Twitter at Sovereign Comics. Sovereign Comics is spelled SOVEREIGN Comics. And then there's also my Patreon, which is um, www.patreon.com/Chimera Kingdom, because that is the name of my community. Because when you see my logo, it is not well, it's a lion head, but it's a chimera for the most part. But so yeah, those are the places you can find me. The places I use the most, of course, are Patreon, then Instagram. I'm really trying to get into Twitter, trying to post more. I'm having a little more fun on it, so I'm using Twitter. And then my Facebook gets posts too, whenever I post to Instagram. I had a TikTok. I still go up there because I have friends up there, so I go and like their stuff. But TikTok kind of made me mad because they hit me with a community violation for my own character, and I'm still fighting that. Like, this is my character. This character is copywritten, not to mention my company's or registered trademark. This is mine. Take away your community guideline. But I haven't heard anything, so I'm less like, well, whatever. So, um, yeah, and from what I've been hearing from my friends who are really like TikTok, they've been saying that's been one of the massive problems that's been going on with TikTok
Yeah,
lately.
I'm not
So
on TikTok. I don't have the
yeah,
time. I just don't have the
yeah,
time. It goes back to that where I'm on
hmm
YouTube, I'm on Instagram. I'm not good at Instagram either, but honestly, I'm heavily on Twitter, heavily on Facebook, heavily on YouTube, and it gets to a point where you can't be everywhere and have a 40-hour work week and do a bunch of other stuff. And TikTok is the last one in, it's the first to go.
yeah, yeah.
But
And that's how it
nothing.
was with me because this is the last one in for me too. And I was like, okay, you can leave. And everybody's like, you're gonna stay on Twitter? I'd rather be on Twitter than TikTok because Twitter's not
Twitter's
going to give
fun.
me a community violation for posting my own copyright IP. So,
Right, yeah,
so
I've never got a violation on TikTok. It's just that it was the
mhm,
last one in, first to go, and
yeah,
it's just time. But I digress. I'm gonna quickly promote everything I got. Obviously, I'm Pop Anime Comics on Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, doesn't give community violations, so go check that out. Instagram is pretty cool. They don't torture me on Instagram either. So it's
yep,
Pop
yep.
Anime Comics. Facebook is Pop Anime Comics. YouTube is Pop Anime Comics. And yeah, this is the start of a new season. I have 3 tomorrow. I have Dustin Waller coming on. I have Greg Bo Watson, who's a cover artist, and I got TriStar, who's an artist, Tristan Thompson, who is
Nice.
TriStar, and very, very cool start. And then next week, I have DJ Croft coming on, Chris Brown. I got Rich Parada, I want to say, coming on Saturday, and then I may have Bella Rockefeller coming on, and she's really, really attractive. So there you go.
Yeah,
And that's what I got so far coming on. And you never know who's going to show up. I'm going to be shooting off a bunch of messages as soon as I get off here. And I do have Buy Me a Coffee. And I'm just going to throw this up there that if you do not buy me a coffee, she may or may not show up. And you don't want to upset her. So if this terrifies you, go buy me a coffee. It's in the
oh,
link up above or down below or wherever you want to go. And yeah, she'll come down. But oh wait, nobody did it yet, so staying up.
no,
Did somebody do it?
no,
Oh
she's coming
no,
for
they didn't
you.
do it.
Oh,
But
sh-
all seriousness, support indie. You should need to support comics, and you don't have to buy me a coffee if you don't want to. But it's always appreciated when people do. And again, though, she may or may not haunt you. And I do love Cubby Thompson because Cubby
yeah.
is very, very, very attractive. Not gonna lie. And I will be doing something 10:30 Friday night. Again, I am pro AI art, and I am going to alienate half, if not all, of the comic community. So it's been nice knowing everybody, and who knows, maybe season 4 will only last 3 weeks at this rate. But on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Um, I would say definitely support indie comics. If everybody's saying they're looking for something new, they're looking for these certain things. Whether you're looking for LGBTQIA plus stories or stories with black leads or just stories that are different from what's really going on. You're getting tired of seeing all the revamps and the rehashes. I think DC right now is going through another universal ending event. Give independence a shot. There's a lot of good writers, good artists in the independent world. Give it a shot. Start with Sovereign Comics if you haven't already. Start here.
Well, I believe that, everybody, is a wrap.